In studio art for the graphic artist, students learn about various art and design principles by employing both fine art tools and digital tools. Here we started with the fundamental use of pen on paper. We also started studying the term line. We can draw a line. There's the line of a poem. Someone might use a pickup line on you. You wait in line at the grocery store. So we look at each term on the fundamental as well as the metaphorical level. Students then drew the same Zentangle pattern using a brush in Photoshop. They started off on the left. You can see that the lines are a little bit wavy. And then they were introduced to the smoothing function in Photoshop. So when you draw in Photoshop with a brush and use the smoothing function, there's a little bit of a lag. There's a little bit, it almost mimics the friction of pen on paper and allows you to draw more precise lines. For this iteration, the student used the line tool in Photoshop, which allows you to make very straight, precise, evenly spaced lines. Now, what's fascinating about this Zentangle design is that these are all straight lines, but they create the illusion of curves. Using software to create 3D models, students also created a digital version of this pattern, which could later be 3D printed. For this version of the project, students put their initials on their work. Then we got out the traditional fine art tools where we had carving blocks and then sharp tools for carving and carved the same pattern into the block. So once again, we have more iterations here of the digital and the fine art. Students then applied printing ink to both blocks so they could make prints. On the left, you can see the fine art block is printed. And on the right-hand side, you can see where the 3D printed block has been inked and printed. And on the right-hand side, with the 3D printed block, you can see the lines are more precise. After we had exhausted the possibilities for the element of line, we moved on to form. Students were shown in Adobe Illustrator how to create three-dimensional objects. They started off making cylinders and spheres and cubes, and then were allowed to explore wherever their imagination took them. What they created in Illustrator can be 3D printed. And then, to continue with the theme of the course, we went back to using the hands-on art material of clay and created the same cylinders and spheres and cubes using the traditional medium. Students also studied the impact of color choices, and working with a young artist who works as a digital director for a gallery in New York City, they learned about individual branding versus branding for a client. This readied them for the midterm project, where they each were given a library book that related to graphic design, and then they were tasked with creating 2 handmade books that reflected the themes and ideas and branding of the library book, as well as designing on the computer a digital book that could be printed. Daniela carved a block and then inked it and printed it for the cover of her handmade books. Also, as assigned, she used watercolor. And to fully understand the history of graphic design, students were required to print out some text and glue it into their book or paste it into their book, therefore understanding the origin of the term cut and paste. From the digital file Daniela created, we can easily print multiple books. This contrasts sharply with the 2 handmade books she made, where she had to painstakingly create each page and then sew the spine together. Ramey rose to the challenge of representing the library book she randomly received as she followed with the branding guidelines, the overall layout scheme of the original book. She did masterful work with watercolor, with binding, and as well with the digital book incorporating so many elements like the original. Building on the skills he developed creating his midterm books, Collge, a student athlete, created this book for his peers that outlines different successful approaches to navigating life as a student athlete. The athletic department at AIC may be handing out this book to ensure success for all student athletes.